Putin made the most terrible decision of his life. Russia is taking everything up to the Dnieper. The armed forces' defense has collapsed. The unexpected Russian breakthrough caught them off guard. The southern front is collapsing before our eyes. While the whole world was watching the fighting, Russian troops carried out a strategic maneuver that could change the entire map of the conflict. Less than 12 miles separate the advanced units from Zaporozhye. At the same time, an offensive is underway on Dnepropetrovsk. Ukrainian generals are in a panic. Deputies openly accuse the command, and diplomats admit the inevitability of further losses. Today we will analyze how the breakthrough occurred on a section of the front that was considered secondary, why the Ukrainian command was not ready for such a development of events, and what is behind the retired general's statements about the inevitability of taking Kherson, Nikolaev, and Odessa. We will analyze the tactical picture at the junction of three regions, show how the capture of small villages opens the way to regional centers, and explain why two bridges can decide the fate of an entire city. Stay until the end to understand why even those Ukrainian military personnel who spoke about victory a year ago are now drawing apocalyptic scenarios of losing the entire south of the country. Mariana Bezuglaya made a statement that shocked Ukrainian society. The Verkhovna Rada deputy did not hide the scale of the catastrophe unfolding on the southern borders. Russian forces approached Zaporozhye at a distance of less than 12 miles and simultaneously launched an operation against Dnepropetrovsk. Her words sounded like a death sentence. These are no longer insignificant towns like Pokrovsk or Konstantinovka. We are talking about major industrial centers with a population of hundreds of thousands of people. Bezuglaya placed responsibility for what is happening on Alexander Syrsky, who continues to serve as commander-in-chief despite growing criticism. The deputy actually accused him of losing the battle for the South, concentrating all available reserves in other directions. While elite brigades are bleeding to death in hopeless attacks near Kupiansk, the southern flank was left practically uncovered. This is not the private opinion of one politician. This is a public acknowledgement of a systemic error in strategic planning. Write in the comments what you think. Why did the Ukrainian command ignore the threat in the southern direction for so long? Recent weeks have brought a series of alarming news from the Zaporozhye direction. Airborne units of the Russian Federation breached the defenses in Primorskoye, where foreign mercenaries were holding positions. Despite the presence of professional military personnel from Western countries, the defense could not withstand the onslaught. Ukrainian units abandoned the settlement and retreated to backup lines. The significance of this breakthrough goes far beyond one village. Primorskoye is located at a critical point. From here, it is possible to control the main supply routes to Zaporozhye. The city receives the lion's share of cargo via two bridges across the Dnieper. If Russian drone operators establish constant surveillance of these crossings and bring them under fire, the supply of the regional center will be paralyzed. A similar situation has already played out in the Odessa region when the destruction of several key bridges divided the region into isolated parts. At the same time, Russian units are developing success in the Gulyayi-Polye area. Here, the offensive is proceeding in a fan in several directions at the same time, preventing the enemy from concentrating forces for a counterattack. Each captured settlement becomes a base for the next attack. Ukrainian defense in the Dnepropetrovsk region is also beginning to show signs of critical stress. There are not enough troops, reserves are exhausted, fortifications are not completed. In Kyiv, a wave of criticism is growing against the military leadership. Syrskyi is accused of a fundamental error in the distribution of forces. Instead of creating a tiered defense in all directions, he relied on active defense, where the best brigades are thrown into suicidal counterattacks. Losses are huge, results are minimal. And in the meantime, a gaping breach has formed in the south, into which Russian units have rushed. Mariana Bezuglaya is not alone in her assessments. She is one of the most consistent critics of the current commander-in-chief and considers him personally responsible for a series of military failures. At the same time, President Zelensky demonstratively supports Syrskyi and refuses to consider the issue of his replacement. The impression is that there is discord between the political and military leadership, when some see a catastrophe and others pretend that everything is under control. Major General, retired Dmitry Marchenko, has joined the chorus of critics. This man earned a reputation at the beginning of the conflict, organizing a successful defense of Nikolaev in the spring of 2022. Then he was a symbol of resistance, a hero about whom all Ukrainian media wrote. Today, the same Marchenko is making statements that sound like a capitulation to the inevitable. The Russian army will not stop at Zaporozhye, he claims. The ultimate goal is to reach the Black Sea coast. To a direct question from journalists about Russia's plans regarding Odessa, the general answered unequivocally, yes, and not only Odessa. This is the recognition of a person who understands the logic of military operations and sees what is happening at the front. Marchenko actually described the strategic plan of the Russian command: Zaporozhye, Dnepropetrovsk, the crossing of the Dnieper, the return of Kherson, the capture of Nikolaev, and the final march on Odessa. Each stage logically follows from the previous one. Write in the comments, do you consider General Marchenko's words to be panic or a sober assessment of military reality? In an interview with a Ukrainian publication, the general did not mince words. With such leadership and such an attitude to the war, the enemy will quickly take key cities and launch an offensive into the entire depth of the left bank. Gulyai-Polye and Pokrovsk have already been virtually lost. Russian units are penetrating deeper into the Dnepropetrovsk region, approaching the outskirts of Zaporozhye. Then there is the crossing of the river, the return of control over the right bank in the Kherson region, the offensive on Nikolaev and Odessa. Marchenko, a native of the Nikolaev region, knows the area thoroughly. His forecast is based not on emotions, but on an understanding of geography and an assessment of the balance of power. Behind the current front line in the south, there is a strategic void. For 2 years, the Ukrainian command built fortifications in the Kharkiv region, believing that the main attack would fall there. The southern direction was considered secondary. Between Zaporozhye and Dnepropetrovsk stretches a steppe, almost devoid of serious defensive structures. The general blames both commanders of recent years. Both Zaluzhny and Syrskyi made the same fatal mistake. They threw elite units into the meat grinder of the summer counteroffensive of 2023. The best brigades, equipped with Western equipment, trained by NATO instructors, were sent into frontal attacks on fortified positions. The result is zero in terms of strategic goals, but catastrophic in terms of losses. Now these brigades are gone. The equipment was destroyed, the personnel were knocked out, the morale was undermined, and a huge section from Zaporozhye to Dnepropetrovsk was left without tiered defense, without reserves, without the ability to stop the offensive. Marchenko publicly states what they prefer to remain silent about in official Kyiv. The game in the south is lost. It will only get worse. Why did an authoritative military man, who until recently was considered a hero of defense, decide to make such revelations? His behavior can be interpreted as a desperate attempt to reach those who make decisions. Marchenko is shouting about an impending catastrophe which the Kyiv leadership stubbornly ignores. He lays out the whole truth about the lost personnel, about the talentless planning, and about the clear plan of the enemy, which is methodically being implemented. The general's voice is not alone. A member of the Presidium of Officers of Russia, Timur Sertlanov, confirms his assessments from the opposite side. Ukrainian troops are demoralized, he states. A wide bridgehead is opening up for the capture of the Dnepropetrovsk and Zaporozhye regions, followed by access to Nikolaev and Odessa. When analysts on both sides of the conflict say the same thing, this is a reason to think about the reality of the forecast. Even Ukrainian diplomacy recognizes the hopelessness of the situation. Dmitry Kuleba, who served as Minister of Foreign Affairs, made a statement that sounded like a death knell for hopes of a turning point. In 2026, Ukraine will lose even more people in territory. There are not enough forces to change the trajectory of the war. This is the recognition of a high-ranking diplomat, a person who, by his position, is obliged to inspire optimism in allies and demoralize the enemy. Marchenko's words become clearer in the context of the tactical situation in the southern directions. Let's consider what is happening at the junction of three regions, where Russian units have created bridgeheads for further offensive. Around Novopavlovka, fierce battles are ongoing without decisive progress on either side. The pocket between several settlements is not closing in any way. Ukrainian units managed to repel a mechanized attack by the forces of a platoon group. But this is a local success against the backdrop of the overall unfavorable development of events. The key area was the direction to Alexandrovskoye, where the battle for Velikomikhailovka and Pokrovskoye is unfolding. The Russian command is preparing an assault on Severn-Otradny and Zapadnye Iskra. Judging by the concentration of forces, it is planned to force the Volchya River, followed by encirclement near Kreprayon. If this maneuver succeeds, the entire group in this area will be threatened. Write in the comments, do you follow the daily changes in the front line, or is this detail too difficult to grasp? Russian assault groups took Bratskoye in the Pokrovsky district of the Dnepropetrovsk region. The tricolor flag has been raised in the center of the settlement, which has been confirmed by official sources. Bratskaya is located on the left bank of the Gaichur River. Its capture opens up operational space for advancing deep into the region. Each such village is not just a symbolic victory, it is a road junction, a high-rise for observation, a base for deploying artillery. The Orakhovskoye direction shows signs of a systematic offensive. West of Gulyai-Polye, Russian units are steadily moving towards Zalaznichny and further south of Dorozhnyanka. The operations involve units of the 57th Motorized Rifle Brigade, which are supported by operators of FPV drones with fiber optic control. This technology excludes the possibility of suppressing the signal by electronic warfare means, which makes the drones virtually invulnerable until the moment of impact. At the same time, the Gulyapolye fortified area is being cleared from the northwestern side. Russian infantry occupied the green area along with the surrounding area of over 3 square miles. This bridgehead allows to develop the offensive towards Verkhnaya Tersa and strengthen positions on the eastern approaches to Orahov. The Gaicher River has already remained in the rear of the advancing units, which indicates the depth of the advance. Assault units are attacking several settlements at once: Ternovataya, Priluki, Elena Konstantinovka, Sviatopetrovka. Ukrainian units are undertaking desperate counterattacks, trying to stop the offensive. A rear base in Yegorovka was destroyed, which complicates the supply of the defenders. But the overall picture shows that the initiative is entirely on the side of the attackers. The defense can only slow down, but not stop the advance. Units operating along the Dnieper are approaching Zaporozhye systematically and methodically. Moving along the left bank, they reach Balabino. Behind this settlement begins the Kommunarsky district of the regional center. To the front edge, less than 7.5 miles. On the right flank of the offensive, Pavlovka was taken. In the center, battles are ongoing for Novoboykovskoye and Magdalenovka. Each advance reduces the distance and increases the psychological pressure on the city's garrison. Near Primorskoye, Ukrainian units continue to counterattack, but meet stubborn resistance from units of the 108th Airborne Assault Regiment. Russian drone operators systematically strike at strong points in the Belogorye and Orekhovo areas. The supply of Zaporozhye is still functioning, so the city continues to defend itself. The critical point is the 2 bridges through which the main cargo flow goes. As soon as they are under constant fire control, the situation will change dramatically. Activity is observed even in the Kherson region. Russian units carried out attacks east of the city, in the area of the Antonovsky Bridge, and on Quarantine Island in the western part. An explosion of unclear nature occurred in the building of the local SBU administration. Drones hit military targets in the center of Kherson and in the village of Tarasa Shevchenko. Remotely controlled equipment of the 98th Airborne Division conducted a series of sabotage operations in the Novaya Kakhovka area. All these tactical episodes make up a mosaic of a strategic operation. The Russian command does not act chaotically, but according to a clear plan. Gulyapolye creates a threat to Orakhov. Primorskoye puts the logistics of Zaporozhye at risk. The advance in the Dnepropetrovsk region forms a bridgehead for an offensive on the regional center. Activity near Kherson is preparing the ground for the crossing of the Dnieper. Each direction complements others, creating a synergistic effect. The Ukrainian command is trying to react, but it reacts late. Syrsky withdrew all combat-ready reserves to Kupiansk and Pokrovsk. There, Ukrainian brigades are carrying out counterattacks, which cost huge losses in manpower and equipment, but do not bring strategic results. Meanwhile, a vacuum of forces has formed in the south. There are no reserves to strengthen the defense, no time to build fortifications, no way to stop the methodical advance of the enemy. The summer counteroffensive of 2023 became a strategic catastrophe. It absorbed the best personnel, the most modern equipment, a colossal amount of ammunition. Western partners provided everything they could: Leopard tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles, Stryker armored personnel carriers. NATO instructors trained crews and infantry. A grandiose offensive was planned, which was supposed to turn the tide of the war. The result is known. Minimal tactical successes with huge losses. Most of the Western equipment has been destroyed. Elite brigades have lost their combat capability, and a huge section of the front, in the south, has been left without tiered defense. Marchenko directly calls this a fatal mistake of both Zaluzhny and Siersky. Both commanders relied on active actions in one direction, exposing other areas. Now the consequences of this mistake are unfolding in real time. Russian troops are approaching Zaporozhye. An offensive is underway on Dnipropetrovsk. The Ukrainian defense is unable to stop the advance. Demoralization is growing. Generals openly talk about the inevitability of losing entire regions. Diplomats admit the lack of resources to change the situation. Deputies accuse the command of catastrophic miscalculations. The southern front is collapsing before our eyes. Russian troops are less than 12 miles from Zaporozhye and are developing an offensive on Dnipropetrovsk. Deputy Bezuglaya publicly accused Siersky of leaving the south without reserves. General Marchenko desperately painted a scenario of losing Kherson, Nikolaev, and Odessa. Diplomat Kuleba admitted the lack of forces to change the trajectory of the war. The tactical picture at the junction of the regions shows the methodical advance of Russian units, creating bridgeheads for operations against regional centers. The logistics of Zaporozhye hangs on two bridges, and their loss will make the city unstoppable. The Ukrainian command is paying for a strategic mistake, throwing the best forces into a hopeless counteroffensive and exposing critically important sections of the defense. Write in the comments, do you consider General Marchenko's forecast about the loss of the entire South to be realistic, or is this an exaggeration of the scale of the threat?